Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good morning, good evening, good night. I know we have folks joining in from all over the globe. Welcome to our second Hostfully University webinar. And we're excited to bring you really our second most requested topic today, automating guest messaging around email and SMS text. And so I'm Bryce Carpenter. I head up our customer success team here at Hostfully. Glad to be with you. And I'm joined today by our senior onboarding manager, Sarah Adams. Sarah, welcome. Thanks for jumping on with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and Sarah, I can't think, aside from maybe Rihanna on our team, maybe David, a few other people, there's probably no one who's helped more customers set up their Hostfully account than you and just a few people at Hostfully. And so you've had a lot of repetition. You've created some really cool templates, some really cool kind of best practice templates for our customers to take a look at. And so I'm excited to get into this with you today. So thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've had a unique perspective of one, seeing so many different types of accounts and different ways that property managers run their business and how they kind of tailor their messaging to their guests and their market. So I've had that perspective, and then also just having previous experience as a property manager, I know the importance of messaging and how powerful it can be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and dive in. We're going to spend some time under primarily the templates and triggers area of a Hostfully account today. But Sarah, I'll let you go ahead and kick us off.
Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to start with our system templates to kind of get a good understanding of what the Hostfully platform just offers right off the bat for you. So let me pull that up here. Okay, so I am under the drop-down menu under templates and triggers. And this first tab here, system templates, this is mainly for your direct booking site or where you are going to be the merchant of record. So where you might be using that Stripe or PayPal vacation rent payment account and processing payments for your guests. So these really, you can consider them like the transactional messages in here. They're all associated with an event in the system. So basically something has to happen to prompt one of these messages to go out. So you can view any of these messages by clicking on the English button. It's going to pull up a window where you can see the message. You can edit any of this. This is just verbiage we've created for you, but it's fully customizable in here. And you'll notice these here are going to be variables. So these are going to auto-populate information once this message has sent. And you do have the option to insert from our list of variables as well. So some of these are going to be sent out automatically. The ones with the orange little cogwheels in here will indicate if they're going to go out automatically. And then the other category, we kind of put the ones into or semi-automatic, which just basically means you have to take intervention in the platform to actually send those out. So for example, the quote message in here, this would never go out unless you were going to go to the pipeline and you had a new lead in here that you wanted to send a quote. So this guest right here, Santa Claus, is in the quote bubble. I can then send that guest a quote, and this is pulling from that list of system templates. And you can see how it's auto-populated with that information. So that's how the ones that don't have the orange wheels work. Now, there's a bunch of these with the orange wheels in here, and that doesn't necessarily mean that your guest would ever receive all 15 of these messages. It just means that if that event occurs. So we have a great document that's linked here. And this goes through each of these messages and kind of walks through those terms for the timeline of when these go out. And a lot of these you do want to go out, right? So, when a guest pays in full, they're going to automatically get this transaction paid in full message. And it's going to populate with a photo of your property. It's going to have your logo here. And if you don't want these messages to go out for any reason, you can always turn these off. So you do have full capability of turning these off in the system. You can also add additional languages. You do have to translate those yourselves, but we have the settings so that when we set up triggers, when these messages are sent automatically, it'll recognize your guest language preference on their device and will send in that language, which is a really cool feature. Let's see, you've also, so these are all the ones for the guest. If you keep going down, you've got some ones for booking agents, property owners, and these are just going to be helpful reminders for you throughout the platform as well. I think that's kind of it for system templates.
Great. Sarah, something you had mentioned to me earlier too, if customers want to create alternate versions based on these system templates, they can go ahead and just copy and paste those as well. It's kind of nice sometimes to just grab all those variables and what we've already kind of built out, and they can move it over into a custom template.
Yeah, absolutely. I have an example of that, and I'll kind of talk more about it later, but one of the templates in here, the balance due message, you could essentially just copy this and use it if you wanted to set up a custom trigger or a custom automation, and copy that into a custom template in here. And so any of these you can copy and paste and use the formatting. Like this new booking notification one, I've just copied and pasted from one of those system templates, and I've edited the wording in here, changed some of the variables to tailor it for my specific message.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now we're going to go ahead and get into actually creating some custom templates. And Sarah and I just wanted to share kind of a few best practices that we've observed over the years, and a few things that we found to be helpful for customers. And so they're really just kind of 4 quick, easy tips that I'm going to pull up just real quick on my screen here, and we'll share those with you. So a few things to consider. One, don't be afraid to repeat information. This kind of goes for all adult learners and all of us that are trying to retain information. And so sometimes when we talk to customers, they're like, well, I told the guest that once in this one email. If it's important information, if it's something that people seem to miss or misunderstand, don't be afraid to repeat that or restate that. Second, email, and this may seem like a no-brainer, but email really works best for longer communications. We understand sometimes there's a long list that you need to convey. Email's best for that. Don't try and squeeze that into a text or SMS message. It just ends up being kind of unruly on a mobile device. We've also found that text works really well when a guest is in-house, and is a great way to check in once people are on vacation or in property. They just really may not be checking email. And so any communications that you need to do while the guest is in-house, text can be a great way to do that. And then finally, and we'll talk a little bit about this, although today's really not focused on guidebooks, whether you use Hostfully's guidebooks or you have your own, created or set up, those home related guidebooks can really cut down on too much communication. And so we'll talk about a couple of strategic places during the guest communication journey that you should really drive them to your guidebook, your house manual, kind of if you have that all-encompassing place to share information about the property, check-in instructions, check-out instructions, stuff like that. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but having that kind of single one-stop shop can be very helpful when communicating with guests, and you do have to kind of train them to go there. And so as Sarah takes a look at some of our template suggestions here, we'll talk a bit more about how to do that. So back over to you, Sarah.
Thank you. Let me pull up my screen again. Okay, so under custom templates, this is where you're able to build out text message templates or email templates. One good thing to note about email templates, even though this says email to your Airbnb guests, we will send this directly into their Airbnb inbox. So we do have some template examples. They're located on our help articles here, and they're also pre-populated in your account when you sign up with Hostfully. And these are some good practice messages in here to look at and great examples of how you can really utilize our variables. So this booking confirmed message, I could essentially use this for all of my properties. And that saves me time from creating, let's say you've got 20 properties. You don't have to set up 20 different thanks for booking messages because of these variables in here. We also have variables to automatically share your guidebooks. I'll talk a little bit more about our pre-arrival form in a little bit, or collect digital signatures from your guests to sign your rental conditions. Another great example is the check-in instructions message in here. So I've got my kind of important information right out in the front, easy to find. It's going to pull the Wi-Fi codes and the check-in times, the address, all of that from your property information in Hostfully. And one of the really cool variables that I like to point out is the check-in instructions. So under your property, there is a check-in instructions variable, there's a check-in instructions tab where you can enter that property specific information about your listing. You can also add pictures on here. And this is going to save you time from having to create 20 different check-in messages, because essentially you could put whatever property specific information you want in here, and that variable is going to pull that information into this portion of your message. So maybe you want to put in, how to get inside or where the driveway is or any of that information. That might also be in your guidebook, but like Bryce said, it doesn't hurt to repeat information in your messages. So that's a really cool variable, saves you time. There's also a, 2-week reminder in here if you just want to check in with your guests, let them know that you're aware that they're coming up and that you're excited for their stay, sharing again maybe that pre-arrival information. During stay checkup, this is also, I think, an important one, and I think this one probably works a little bit better via text, but I do see a lot of people also send this to Airbnb inbox and emails. And, this is just sending this one day after the guest has stayed, maybe that next morning, saying, how was your first night? We just wanted to check in. Is there anything we can do now to make your stay better? And just kind of being, proactive about their stay. And then checkout information kind of works the same. We don't currently have a variable for checkout information, so you could kind of tailor this to each of your properties, or there is a feature under the templates and triggers where you can create custom variables in here. So under custom data, this is where you can build out your own variables, whether that's, parking instructions or trash day or whatever specific information you might want to put in here. You have short text and long text options, and these become variables that you can add into your custom templates. Now you would need to still define this for each property. So let's say you created a checkout instructions custom data field. You would then go back into your property, and there's a custom manage custom data field that would let you define each of those variables. You'll see this is an example of the long text. So you've got some, longer options in here to type instructions. So you can define these for each property and then add them into your custom templates. Some other kind of cool reminders that I've seen a lot of people set up and that I typically recommend in here, besides for those ones that I just went over, security deposit reminder. So if you want to send, not only messages to your guests, you can also use these custom templates to send to yourself or your cleaners or maybe your owners. But pretty much whoever's in your system, you have the ability to automate messages to. And this could just be as simple as a reminder to refund that security deposit. If you collect security deposits and you need to go in and refund the guest, you could create this message that just gives you the guest's name, when they checked out, the property name. One other cool feature I like is that you can also include variables in the subject line. So property managers are busy. You might just want to see the subject line and be aware of it before you get a chance to go in later and get on the computer or whatnot. So that's a really cool one, setting up reminders for security deposits. You could do that in a text message as well. So I pretty much just copied and pasted that same message because it's pretty short. So into a text message reminder. I showed this briefly earlier, but maybe you want to get a message every time you get a new booking and you want to include specific information. You could copy and paste one of the system templates or just build your own. But I like this variable in here, the statement variable. And that's going to give you a breakdown of the reservation amount. You could also send this to your guests as sort of a receipt. That's one way we recommend using this variable. But you'll see how that reservation or this template has populated with that statement variable in here. And that just gives you a great overview of that new booking that you just received. Another one in here, trash reminder. So maybe you have your guests take out trash, or you want to send a reminder to your handyman or to yourself to take out the trash. You could create a custom variable with trash instructions. That's a cool one that I've seen people set up in here. And have this go out as a text message to yourself or your guest or whoever you need to get this message. And all of these messages in here are going to be associated with a trigger if you want to automate it. So the triggers are what actually automate these messages, and you get to decide when these messages go out. So you'll see I've set up a trash day reminder in here, and this is a complex condition. It's going out as a text message to my guest, and it's only going to go out if the stay is active and the day of the week is Wednesday. So that's one of our options for complex triggers in here. And when I click on complex condition, you're going to be able to see all of those conditions in here. So day of the week, that's the one that I set up in here. You can customize this per property. So if I want to add on another condition, and this one is just going to Sarah's sanctuary, you can be very specific with where you want these messages to go. And then you would just assign that action to it and select who you want it to go to. You can select multiple people too, and then select your template. Same with that security deposit reminder. I could set up a custom trigger in here to go out. Let's say you want to get that reminder to refund the security deposit after the stay ends, maybe one day after the stay ends. Or maybe you want to get a notification like 8 hours after the stay ends. You can really be specific with these triggers in here to automate those messages. Yeah, I think those are some of the biggest messages that I've seen people really set up in here. I think another cool one is the review request. And automating this to your guest and including your direct booking website link so that you can, get those guests to come back and book directly with you. And that's one of our variables in here that will populate your direct booking website link. But this one can go out and you can customize this per channel. So maybe you want a specific one to go out to Airbnb or Vrbo or booking.com, and just asking them to review their stay with you and letting them know that you might also be reviewing them as a guest. And then I think there was one other thing I wanted to point out in that during stay checkup message. I think this is a great opportunity to ask your guests if there's anything you can do to elevate their stay. And then in addition to asking them that in your checkout instructions, I highlighted this part because I think it's really good to be proactive and ask your guests if there were any accidents or damages or anything that happened that you might need to be aware of, whether it's just a light bulb's out or who knows what, maybe they stained the carpet. Just sometimes asking your guests instead of waiting for them to come to you. I've experienced has been really helpful in asking my guests that. And that way they're aware that, there might be a security deposit or they've paid for some guest insurance, but, letting them know that you're going to do a walkthrough of the home and whatnot. Those are some other helpful tips that I've liked to recommend.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. Something that I'll just kind of replug that we mentioned a little bit earlier around guidebooks. In those messages to your guest, really as leading up to the stay, when they're in home, and even when they're preparing for checkout, really focusing on that link to the guidebook can be a powerful way to help get that guest all of the information that they need. So Sarah, I know in the templates you shared, you've got a lot of that instruction included there in the emails. I think if our customers want to kind of back that up with a text message, so let's say you've got check-in instructions, but they want to also send a text, you can really point guests just to the guidebook. You should have hopefully your check-in instructions set up in your guidebook as well. And then that really starts to teach the guest to go there, for any resources related to the home. Same thing with your, if you have a check-in email with the guest after they've been in house for 24 hours, just remind them of the guidebook, send them back there to your house manual so that they can view, helpful videos or walkthroughs on how to use the washing machine or the coffee maker or the hot tub. Really, sometimes less can be more. And as we see customers kind of build out and invest that time in their guidebooks, they'll really just push people more and more to the guidebooks and have them self-serve and get all that information in one place.
Yeah, definitely.
Real quick, Sarah, there have been a couple questions about GIFs or images, and people are wondering, like in the templates themselves, can those be included, multiple logos? Could you speak a little bit about what is and isn't possible as far as images and emails?
Yeah, sure. So in our custom templates, you are able to drag and drop photos into the custom template. In the check-in instructions variable that I mentioned earlier, that's also a great place to add images. Multiple logos. So we have the variable for agency logo, which pulls from your main settings. And there's only one option for a logo there, but you can edit the messages, like the custom templates, individually. So you'd have to just add on that logo to the custom template. You also have access to the HTML of these messages. So if you're familiar with coding messages, or you have a designer, or you can easily go find different programs online that'll help you build the coding for it. You could, design something with multiple logos and just add that into your custom templates. I've had people do that before. But as far as the Hostfully variable, we only have one option for an agency logo.
Great, thank you. There were also a couple questions around including hyperlinks in these messages, and specifically kind of when, if ever, will Airbnb allow hyperlinks versus maybe Vrbo. So could you share a little bit of your experience on that?
Sure, yeah. So you are allowed to send links to Airbnb. That's how we're able to share our guidebook links. So after the guest has booked, they don't flag you or anything for sending any URLs. And then Vrbo does not either. You're communicating with them via email after a guest has booked. We're not fully integrated with the Vrbo inbox quite yet. So those messages will go to the Vrbo guest email. Now our inbox does track those emails, so you still have that thread of messages in your Hostfully inbox, but you're allowed to share URLs or hyperlinks as well.
Great, thank you. Okay, those are all the questions we have so far. So I think we can continue with custom data.
Cool. So we already touched on custom data with creating the custom variables. Bryce, maybe you want to touch on service provider communications, owner communications a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. All right. So let me make sure that'll come up for everyone here. Got it. Okay, so obviously we've kind of been focusing on guest communications and the transactional messaging with the guests. We also have the ability to communicate with both service providers and with owners. And so important to consider that when you're integrating jobs like a cleaning job into the system. And so let's talk through that a little bit here. So one of the first things just to touch on here is the creation of jobs. And so if you have, let's just use the cleaning service provider as an example, and you would like a job for cleaning to be created automatically, you can add that here through a trigger. And I'm just going to call this cleaning job. And the event is when a booking is confirmed. Okay, so when a booking is confirmed, then create a job. We're going to select the service. I only have one here. It's called Bryce's Cleaning. And then you have an option to select the job timing. You can do at check-in, at checkout, or you can do both, check-in and checkout. So typically we want that cleaning job to be at checkout. So this first trigger automatically creates the job itself. And so that's something that we could spend some more time digging into probably on another webinar. We'll dig into service providers, but we can automate the creation of those jobs and a variety of jobs. So once I have that set up, we've got that rule ready to go. Now we also need a template, a way to communicate. As I work with customers, many of them, may prefer, text over email. It's really up to you. It's completely your choice. We do have a few system templates just back here to circle back under the messages to service providers. We have a few examples here of notifications that exist and can be used within the system. There's one here for a notification of a new job. And so if you wanted to start with this as kind of your notification template to your service providers, you could do that. If you just want the text, maybe you just like having these variables and not having to start from scratch, you can grab those. And then over in your custom templates here on the top, we can go ahead and create a new, again, either text or email, either option here. We'll do an email just for the moment. We'll call this cleaning job notification. And I'm going to just use that same name as the subject. And then, let me save that real quick since I just lost my, what I had copied over there. Save that. Just going to hop back here to the system template. And we can use this notification message here. Let's grab the top part here as well. Okay. Back to templates and our clean job notification. Okay, we could add additional variables to this if we wanted. If this is enough information to include, you'll just go ahead and save that template. And then we have to set up one more trigger, and that's to actually fire the message. And so that trigger we're going to call cleaning notification. And so this is going to be triggered when a job is created. So when that cleaning job is created, then we are going to send an email. And something to point out just back here really quick under conditions, you'll see this note that all properties are selected by default. If you have different cleaners for different properties, you'll need to create unique triggers for each of those cleaners. So I have customers where one cleaner might clean 3 of the properties, and they might have a second cleaner who cleans the rest. So you just need to go in here and do property is, and then select your properties. I only have 1 property in my test account, and so that's all we have here. We are going to send that notification. So here are your options, and this is a little bit confusing because this is my account, but I have myself set up as a cleaner. So I chose to notify Bryce the cleaner, and I'm going to send him the cleaning job notification. So in essence, that's what your trigger should look like. Another thing that I'll mention while we're here, sometimes customers have found that it's helpful to notify a service provider immediately when a job's created, like a cleaning job. But then you may also want to notify that service provider when that cleaning is approaching, maybe 24 hours before. And so you can also set up those notifications as well. You just end up adding a time-based condition here for that notification and notify the cleaner of that as well. Again, I found more and more customers moving towards text message since certain providers like your cleaners or greeters may be on the go. So just remember that if you want to notify via text message instead of email, that you can set that up here. Another point just to mention as well is that we can set up some automated communications for owners. So I have had customers in the past that want to notify owners of certain events. Now, by default, when you go over to the properties section here in your account, let's go ahead and click into my property. And then if I go to the owner section, you'll notice here that we can indicate to email the owner and copy them on every confirmed booking. So this is one point of automation in the system that doesn't really require any additional setup. If you go ahead and click that, check the box, it's automatically going to send that system template back in system templates where Sarah and I were working. It will send that to the owners and let them know. So that's one option for communicating with owners. Another, as I'd mentioned, is to build out a customized message template trigger that information over here in the custom templates. And so I could create that custom template for the owner, and then in triggers, when I'm adding that trigger, I would basically go through a similar process. And let's just say that we want to notify an owner when a booking is paid. And so we could do that. We could do send email. And then under the drop down here, you have the option to notify the owner and then select your template. And so if there are specific owners, and we know that each owner can be a little bit different, that want to be notified at certain events, you can include that here as well as a template or trigger for your owners. So keep that in mind as well. Let's see, Sarah, anything you can think of that I missed there, or anything else you wanted to add as far as other parties that we might be communicating with?
No, I think you did a great job of covering all that. And that's typically what I see is, those sorts of triggers based on whether the job was created, whether the booking was made, and then using those time-based triggers. So whether you're, wanting to send notifications a certain amount of time before or after checkout.
Great. And we'll just wrap up here on triggers really quick with just a review of some of the options that we have. There's some new things that have been added to the system here. And so we have the booking related fields: booking request, booking confirmed, updated, canceled, paid. We have some newer fields that haven't always been here, and just some that are helpful. We have this trigger for booking payment failed. And so I have some customers that want to receive a text message when payment fails on one of their bookings. So you could create a really simple text message template under custom templates, and then you could set up a trigger here to notify you via SMS when a payment fails. Also, have some options here that are new under complex conditions. And so we've always had after stay ends and after stay starts. But we now have some additional options here as far as the agreement. So the rental agreement is signed. So you can set that and you can stack multiple conditions. So you could say the rental agreement is signed and the pre-arrival form has been submitted, then send check instructions to the guest. And so we do have some customers that choose to have kind of those gates in place before they send check-in instructions. Sarah had also mentioned the ability to send messages based on day of week. And so again, those garbage reminders or anything else that is day of week type specific, you can now add those conditions here, day of week, and then you choose when that applies. So cool new option there as well. And then finally, just to, when we're looking at communications that are time-based or based on a certain point in time, important to just be aware that obviously you have the option here to set the qualifiers equal to something like 1 day, but you can also do less than or equal to. And that's helpful if you allow guests to make bookings even after, let's say, check-in time, typical check-in time, for example, or you let them make bookings kind of past your typical booking window. And so you can set any of these time-gated type rules so that they're less than or equal to. So if a booking comes in, within that tight window, then you can still have this trigger go out. And you'll see here that it adds this option to even allow this a certain point of time after check-in for last-minute reservations. And so I could say, okay, well, even if it's 4 hours after check-in, I'm still allowing bookings to take place. And so I want this message, check-in instructions, for example, to go out. So keep that in mind as you're using some of these time-based events here and triggers. And then one, I guess, Sarah, this is maybe a little bit fundamental, but just to remind folks on the call, when you're setting up your communications today, there's really kind of a difference between Airbnb and everyone else. All other channels are communicated via email. Airbnb type messages are communicated via the Airbnb messaging platform. And so when you set up a trigger for guest communication, email specifically, you'll have to set up a trigger specific to Airbnb, and that Airbnb message is going to be communicated via Airbnb message. And if it's any of the other channels, Verbo, Hostfully, whatever else you have set up, you can set those all up under the same trigger. But those Airbnb messages have to be set up as Airbnb specifically, and we'll have to do an Airbnb communication through the Airbnb messenger on those. So just keep that in mind. We are exploring options to maybe make that a little bit simpler so that you don't have to set up additional triggers, but today you'll want a trigger for any Airbnb guests and then a trigger for everyone else who receives that communication via email. All right, anything else, Sarah, that you can think of on that?
No, I can answer a couple of questions that have come in if you want me to.
Great, let's do it.
Yeah. So a couple of questions about the time-based conditions, asking if you had to do a little bit of math or not, and what those times are based off of. So it's always going to be based off of your check-in time or checkout time. When it says before or after the stay starts or ends, that's referring to the check-in or checkout time. So it's not based on your like a certain time of day. So if you want a message to go out at 2 p.m. and your check-in time is at 4, you would want to put in 2 hours before check-in time. So you can kind of just do a little bit of math that you need to if you're doing hours instead of days. And then someone asked if there's a notification to reflect changes in the calendar equal to less than 7 days. So I think I answered this right. There's a couple different events. So you could do a booking updated as your event. And then we have the condition to add on whether the stay is less than a certain amount of days or longer than a certain amount of days. So those two, that event and that condition, I think would get you to where you're wanting that message to go out. And then also on your calls with your onboarding specialist, if you're still in onboarding or new to Hostfully, your onboarding specialist will go over all of these steps in detail with you. And I think that's it for questions.
Great.
And then this video is going to be posted on our YouTube channel. And then I believe, does it also email them if you've signed up for the?
It should give them a notification of that too. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we've had a couple people ask that. Okay.
Great. There's a lot here. So last couple areas, and then we'll open up for just final questions here. I'm going to touch really quick on reviews, and then Sarah will talk with us a bit about the pre-arrival forms, since these are also under our templates and triggers section. Starting with reviews, this reviews tab refers specifically to automating Airbnb guest reviews. So your review of the guest. And so within Hostfully, you can set up the system to automatically post a review of the guest after their stay. And so there are a couple steps to do that. There is some documentation here linked as well. So if you're trying to remember that after the fact, feel free to check that out. You can see I have 2 templates set up here already. You can set up to 5 templates to kind of rotate through. And that's the purpose really, is to, if you don't want the same, kind of 5-star guest review template every time that you have a great guest, you can add little variations and nuances. And if you have up to 5 templates here, the system will automatically rotate through those just as you review your guests. And so we're typically going to suggest that you do set these up as 5-star templates. That means that you won't have to really intervene unless the guest wasn't a 5-star guest. And then we'll talk a little bit about how to do that in a minute. But you can see the template here based on the different areas and your recommendation for the guest. You can even include a little comment here, as well as private feedback. That typically comes into play kind of if you're customizing one of these reviews. But as you set those up, again, 1 to 5 templates set up here. You'll just hit create new for any of those that you want to set up. Once those are set, you'll hop over and create a trigger. And so similar to our emails or other things that we're trying to automate here, we're going to set up this Airbnb review, and we're going to go ahead and set up complex condition. And then we will go to, I'm missing it here, Sarah. Am I missing
Yeah,
it?
you can just select the action post review and it will just automatically put those fields for you.
There we go. Okay, that's probably the faster way to do this. And then
the action post review.
Oh, it's not letting me do it. I might have to go back out.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it might have to do with my setup in my test account here, Sarah. It's not showing up. So do you have that set up in yours that you could show really quick?
Yep. Let me pull it up for you.
Okay.
Okay, so when I go to add the trigger, I can just click post review and it's going to automatically add on those conditions that it's going to Airbnb, and you get to decide when you want it to go out. So whether you want it to go out, a couple days, I think you have up till like 14 days to review a guest. But that way you give yourself some time to decide if it was a 5-star guest or not.
Yeah. And that's a good point. You have to make sure that the Airbnb reviews are turned on. I think that's back over on agency settings, right? So that's probably why I was not seeing that.
There's not a button to turn it on. Maybe yours was, I'm not sure, but you just have to create the reviews, create up to 5 different 5-star reviews. You don't have to create 5, but I would recommend doing that so that, guests don't see that you're posting the same thing every time. And it doesn't take long to set those up, but you only need 1 trigger. So you just need that 1 post review trigger, and then that will cycle through those reviews. And then under your reviews section in here, you'll be able to see your scheduled reviews. And that way, if you did have a guest that wasn't a 5-star guest, you'd be able to delete that review before it was posted. You also have the ability to respond to reviews as well, whether it's a guest private comment or your actual public guest reviews are under your property tabs.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. And just to mention here as well, once you set up that trigger, the system will automatically queue up those reviews down towards the bottom of Sarah's screen there that we're looking at. And again, if you've given yourself, 13, 14 days to conduct the review, if you need to go in and make a change and you have a guest that maybe isn't 5-star, you'll actually just delete that review, and then the system will allow you to actually post your own custom review there. And so that's not showing up for us, but you will see that once you set this up within your account.
Yeah, and this is a huge time saver, especially if Airbnb is a really big channel for you. I'm a huge fan of this feature, and looks like a couple other people in our chat are too. And this does help you keep your superhost status, keeping up with those reviews. It just takes a task off your shoulders, gives you more time.
Great. Okay, we're on the home stretch here, and our last topic is pre-arrival forms. Sarah, we'll go to you. Hopefully your account is set up better than mine to be able to show that.
Yeah, sure. So pre-arrival form, I kind of mentioned it in one of the custom templates in here on that welcome message. So this variable right here is going to create a unique link for each of your guests once this message has been sent, and it brings them to your customizable pre-arrival form. So it's under the same tab, templates and triggers, and this is where you can decide what sort of information you want to collect from your guest. And this information that you collect is going to be stored in Hostfully, attached to each reservation. And you're also going to be able to easily see from the pipeline with a little visual reminder of who's filled it out and who hasn't. So the way that this works is you've got some pre-populated fields in here, like the guest's phone number. You can collect government IDs in here, so they can actually upload a picture of their ID. And you can make certain fields required. So if I uncheck it, it means that it's optional. If I check it, it means that it's required in here. And then you can also add in custom fields in here. So maybe you need to know the passport ID number, or you want to know what their favorite coffee is, or whatever you might want to know. You can add custom fields in here and make those required. When a guest says that they're bringing 5 guests, it'll populate 5 options to fill out that guest information. This is what the form kind of looks like. So this is just a preview. When your guest actually clicks on the link, it's taking them to their own page to fill out this form. And they can agree to your house rules again, fill out any of those custom fields that you've added. These estimated arrival times, these actually let you know when your guest is planning on arriving. So it will default on your reservation window to your check-in times, but it will also show on there when their estimated times of arrival is. So to give you an example of what the pre-arrival form would look like after someone has filled it out. One, you can get an email with all of the guest answers, so you can get that sent to you directly. And then that visual reminder that I was referring to is going to be the little check mark that's on the pipeline. So the pipeline, which is reservation management, basically the life cycle of the reservation and where the guest is at in here, gives you that great reminder that, okay, that guest has filled out the pre-arrival form. And then it also stores it on the reservation. So this is a screenshot of the reservation window. And you'll see those estimated time of arrivals would update here with their check-in times, checkout times that they plan on arriving and leaving, the rest of their guest information. And it would have a link to open that ID if they did upload that document. What else in here? So there's a couple different ways to retrieve this information. One, just viewing it on the reservation itself, or we do have logistics reports that you can pull with this guest information. You can create custom guest info reports as well. And Bryce did a great webinar on our enhanced reporting, and it's on our YouTube channel, so definitely go check that out. But you can pull out the guest name and emails and phone numbers and export that as a CSV file and use it however you want. So maybe you go and put it into your own marketing software, or maybe you're using our MailChimp integration and you want to export all these additional information, export all this additional information into your software, you have that ability to. And then the way that I have it set up in here is that on your messaging, it's shared through the custom templates. We also have the option on your agency settings to have your direct booking guests automatically be prompted to fill this out. So this option here, capture guest information after payment, that basically says after your guest has paid, the next page that comes up is going to be the pre-arrival form. So you're just immediately getting that information from your guest about their arrival and their stay right after they've booked. So that's the option for the direct bookings only. For other channels, you would need to make sure that you add it into your templates and triggers. And if you had this unchecked, you could just use the templates and triggers to also send it to your direct booking guests. But a lot of people like just having that automatically set up right after the guest pays. One limitation with this is that it is for all of your properties. So this is not customizable per property yet. We do have an enhancement ticket for that, but right now it is for all of your properties. But this is really just a great way to collect that guest information. A lot of people like getting those emails for marketing purposes, or maybe you need to know the guest age. A lot of international accounts I've had require the passport ID number. And it's awesome because it's always stored in Hostfully attached to each reservation. Yeah, I think that's all for the pre-arrival form. Do we have any questions in the chat about the pre-arrival form?
Not that I've seen yet. I think that's pretty straightforward. We did just roll out an enhancement a little while ago around the government ID, maybe more of an improvement, so that at one point it was a little bit confusing. It looked like a passport was required, and now the system should let you indicate the appropriate government, ID, not passport specific.
Yeah. Awesome.
Right. Yeah, so that's great, Sarah. So we've pretty much covered everything. The only two areas that we didn't really touch on are pretty self-explanatory. You can also see scheduled messages and then a message log there on the far right-hand side. So if you're wanting to see like any upcoming messages, obviously Sarah's got one for her trash reminder here. You can see those, and you can even delete them if you don't want them to go out. And then the message log is going to be a great way to see any messages that have processed. Keep an eye on that little green check mark over on the side. As long as you see that, the message processed successfully, but that's also your opportunity to fire an email or a communication off again, or retry a communication if it's not working. As far as like when messages fail, maybe Sarah, are there certain reasons that you see more often than others and why messages might not send out?
Yeah, if you're using a variable like our lead PIN code variable, which populates from the PIN code option on the reservation, a lot of people use that variable if they're connecting to a smart home integration like Lynx or Remote Lock or Aperto, and they're automating those lock codes in your messages. If you don't have that integration set up and you still have that PIN code variable in your message, then that message is going to fail. So just make sure if you're using this that you've either manually set up a PIN code on the reservation, and I'll just briefly show you where that is, or that you have that integration with your smart locks connected to Hostfully. So under stay details, you've got that PIN code. If you're doing it manually, you could type something in here. But if this was blank and it wasn't entered or wasn't connected to your lock partner, then that message would fail. That's really all that I've seen. I mean, maybe if someone entered a weird email on their guests, on when they made a direct booking or something like that, but I don't typically see too many failed messages. It would really be something technical like that.
Okay, great. All right. Well, I think, Sarah, we've gone through all the questions and I think given a pretty good overview. Not seeing anything else at this time. Of course, if anyone has questions you think of after the fact, feel free to send them over to us, Bryce at hostfully.com or Sarah at hostfully.com, or of course our awesome support team. They're always there 24/7, and they're probably an even better way since they're always keeping an eye out. So. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining. As we mentioned, this will be recorded. Feel free to reference back and keep us posted on what other Hostfully University topics you'd like to see. Either post those through our user group on Facebook. Again, feel free to send those to me, Bryce at hostfully.com. And we look forward to continuing to help you get the most from Hostfully. Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.